For 23 years, a stretch of Central African rainforest larger than Western Europe didn't belong to a country. It belonged on paper to one man, or a king, but not as head of state. As its sole private owner, he never once set foot in it. The profits from rubber and ivory went directly to him. In 1885, the Berlin Conference, a meeting of European powers dividing up Africa without a single African representative present, recognized King Leopold II of Belgium as the personal sovereign of the Congo Free State. Not Belgium, him. Over the next 23 years, a forced labor system built around rubber production killed an estimated 10 million people through violence, starvation, and disease. Roughly half the region's population, by some historians' estimates. In 1908, facing sustained international exposure, Belgium's government annexed the territory as a state colony, ending Leopold's personal ownership. In 2020, a reigning Belgian king expressed, for the first time, official regret. He did not apologize. 1876. Leopold II founds an association publicly framed as scientific and humanitarian, privately designed to secure him a personal colony. 1885, the Berlin Conference grants him the Congo Free State as his own possession. Through the 1890s, global demand for rubber turns the territory into a forced labor economy. Villages are assigned rubber quotas enforced by Leopold's private army, the Force Publique, whose soldiers were required to account for every bullet fired by producing a severed hand. 1890, the Black American historian George Washington Williams publishes the first widely read open letter documenting the atrocities. 1904, British consul Roger Casement's official government report confirms them in detail, fueling a European reform campaign. 1908, under sustained international pressure, the Belgian state annexes the territory directly, ending Leopold's private rule. 1960, Congo becomes independent. On Independence Day, with Belgium's king seated in the front row, Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba delivers a speech confronting colonial rule directly, unscripted and unsanctioned. 1961, Lumumba is assassinated, with Belgian and American involvement, later confirmed. 2002, a Belgian parliamentary inquiry acknowledges Belgium's moral responsibility for his death. 2020, King Philippe writes to Congo's president expressing deepest regrets. 2022, visiting Kinshasa in person, he repeats the regret, again declines to apologize, and returns one physical object to Lumumba's family, a single gold-capped tooth, kept by a Belgian policeman, the only remains of Lumumba's body ever recovered. For Congolese officials and historians, the core demand has never really been about wording. Congo's own human rights minister has said plainly that 60 years after independence, it's time to talk about reparations, not just regret, drawing an explicit comparison to slavery. Congolese opposition figures have called Belgium's royal statements incomplete, noting that an apology and the possibility of repair that would follow from it is what's actually being asked for. The severed hands were not a myth exaggerated by later writers. They were a documented administrative requirement, verified at the time by missionaries, a British consul, and American journalists, and the death toll, estimated at up to 10 million by historians working from missionary records, tax rolls, and population comparisons before and after, made the Congo Free State one of the deadliest colonial regimes in modern history under a single individual's direct ownership. Patrice Lumumba's 1960 speech and his 1961 assassination are remembered in this frame as proof the violence didn't end with Leopold's rule. It simply changed shape. Belgium's official position, expressed most directly in King Philippe's own 2020 letter, does acknowledge the historical record. He wrote of acts of violence and cruelty that still weigh on collective memory, and of wounds of the past whose pain is revived by discrimination still present today. A parliamentary special commission was convened to formally examine Belgium's colonial history and issue recommendations. But the state's language has stayed deliberately calibrated. Regret, not apology. A distinction Belgian officials and lawyers have been candid is not accidental, since a formal apology carries a legal weight that regret does not, potentially opening a path to reparations claims that regret alone doesn't. Belgium's account also draws a sharper internal line than Congo's does. between Leopold's 23 years of personal unaccountable rule and the subsequent 40-plus years of formal Belgian state administration that followed it. A distinction that lets modern Belgium treat the worst atrocities as the crime of one dead king, not a debt the current state itself is legally on the hook for. Here's what sits underneath both governments' careful language. An estimated 10 million dead is a number large enough that historians still argue over exactly how to count it, and small changes in method move it by millions. Yet, the word choice on the apology has stayed almost perfectly stable for over 20 years, moving only from silence to regret again. Leopold's statues still stand in Belgian cities today, some defaced, a few removed, most simply relabeled with an added plaque of historical context, while the only physical remains of Patrice Lumumba's body that Belgium could actually return in 2022 were a single tooth. A private fortune built on 10 million lives left behind public monuments that took a century to earn a footnote. The murdered man who tried to end it in 1960 got a tooth back, 61 years after he died. This series has now asked what a guarantee costs once inconvenient, what a word costs once it's a lever, who gets a seat at the table, and what admitting a fact costs without follow-through. This one adds the plainest version. Sometimes the whole argument comes down to a single word a government is willing or not willing to say regret instead of apology, because everyone involved already understands exactly what saying the second word would legally cost. 10 million estimated dead is not, in the end, the number either government is actually negotiating over. The number they're negotiating over is one word, and everything a court might someday decide that word means. A private colony bigger than the country that ruled it, a severed hand as a receipt, and a single tooth as the only thing ever given back. Next time, we go to the last divided capital city left in Europe, where a wall has run through the middle of one town since 1974, and where the side that voted to reunite the island is not the side most people assume.